That's a picture of it right there. Herod was a form of Antichrist. Now, interestingly enough, this is going to be interesting too. And what I'm about to tell you may pertain to certain sacrifices or things that happen with the Antichrist and when it comes to the Antichrist. Now, some of you know this, some of you don't, but when Jesus was born, he was wrapped in swaddling clothes, and the angels told the shepherd, "You will find the babe lying in a manger." Now, why did it have to happen that way? Why did the birth of Jesus, why am I saying that this individual may be born in a part of the world where shepherding is still an enormous part of commerce, is still very alive and well? This is why. Every firstborn male lamb was considered holy and was set aside for sacrifice in Jerusalem. Sheep herding at that time was a hereditary occupation, and generations of shepherds were trained to care for these special lambs. These shepherds literally risked their lives to protect the sheep from predators and keep them from falling into the many crevices and ravines and treacherousness in the rocky hill country. Now, the newborn lambs would be wrapped tightly. They would be swaddled in specially designated temple cloths, and they would be laid in a manger to keep them contained while they were being examined for blemishes. So the spotless lambs that were born were wrapped in swaddling clothes and then were put in a manger to be examined to make sure they were without spot or blemish. Jesus, Yeshua, was born wrapped in swaddling clothes and was put in a manger because he was without spot or blemish. This is not a coincidence. This is not a coincidence. Now, what does swaddled mean? The phrase swaddling clothes is a translation of the root Greek word sparganoo, S-P-A-R-G-A-N-O-O. So the word appears in only 2 verses in the New Testament, both times in Luke chapter 2. So the first appearance of sparganoo occurs in verse 7, and the second is in verse 12. The Greek word sparganoo means to wrap a child in swaddling clothes, which were long strips of cloth, or to clothe in strips of cloth, to wrap up in strips of cloth. The Greek word sparganoo is different than the word used for burial clothes. So in the Koine Greek, there were numerous words that refer to being clothed. So in scripture, it's discovered that different Greek words describe Jesus's burial process. So in Matthew 27:59, we're told that Jesus was wrapped in a clean linen cloth. The Greek verb for wrapped is entylisso, E-N-T-Y-L-I-S-S-O, which was used to describe the wrapping up of something such as a cadaver. So the Greek word that is translated as linen cloths in the verse, so we have the Greek word for wrapped, and then we have the Greek word for linen cloth, which is sindon, S-I-N-D-O-N. It means linen cloth of good quality, meaning Jesus was given a very good burial in which Joseph of Arimathea played a major role in. The same 2 Greek words, entylisso and sindon, are used in Luke 23:53 to describe the burial process for Jesus. Okay? So what I'm saying is the Greek word for to wrap a child in swaddling clothes is sparganoo. It's very different than the Greek words that were used to describe Jesus's burial. And it had to be this way because that little lamb was wrapped in swaddling clothes. The male baby lamb of the first year that was born was wrapped in swaddling clothes and then placed in a manger to be inspected to make sure it had no spot or blemish. This is why Jesus had to be born amongst the animals where there was a manger to be wrapped in swaddling clothes and put in that manger because he was without spot or blemish. He was the first male. He was the Passover lamb. And so he had to come in that same way. Why am I telling you all of this? Because these are things you have to consider. You have to measure up against scripture, and you have to measure up against what's happening now. And you have to consider that if the enemy is going to counterfeit things, you're going to see similar events like this potentially occur surrounding whoever the Antichrist is. Everyone's got their theory. I will tell you, he has an evil and wickedness we don't know. And he's got a charisma that we have not been privy to yet. Okay, this is a completely different animal. This is the Antichrist of all Antichrists. Okay, this is something we potentially have not been exposed to yet, even though there have been many Antichrists: Hitler, Mussolini, Stalin, Chavez. You've got the dictator of Cuba. They are all forms of Antichrists. They are child's play compared to the Antichrist of the book of Revelation. In fact, to give you a little background, when the word talks about let he who has wisdom calculate, for that's the name of a man and his number is 666. The interesting part about that is the 666, I believe, was written in Hebrew and it wasn't written in Greek. The sentence was written in Greek. The numbers were in Hebrew and they were decoded. And interestingly enough, within the decoding of the 666, they got the name Nero Caesar. Now, Nero Caesar hated the people of God, did horrific things to the people of God, persecuted the people of God, was a dictator, was an antichrist. John, I believe, was telling people, look for a man like Nero Caesar. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up right now, live, how old Nero Caesar was when he came to power, unless there was quite a few of them. When he came to power. At 17 years old, Nero Caesar ascended to the throne, which means John was potentially trying to tell us, look for somebody young like Nero Caesar, who is young and charismatic, but hates Christians and is going to persecute them and is going to persecute the people of God and is going to be incredibly wicked. He was giving us a bit of a character profile, we'll say. Not going to be exactly like it, but this is a character profile we're talking about here. Now, we're going to move on. I just thought I'd add that in. We're going to go to the part of what is a manger. We already touched on that part of what a manger is. But when the angel appeared to the shepherds in the fields, he told them that they would find the newborn king wrapped in swaddling cloths and laying in a manger. They knew exactly where he would be found because swaddling cloths were only used in one particular location and for one particular purpose. So all of the lambs that would be wrapped in swaddling cloths lying in a manger would be in one particular location. So when the angel said that to them, he was actually giving them the clue about where the newborn Jesus, Yeshua, was located. 3 decades later, when Jesus was 30 years old, the Apostle John pointed out his cousin Jesus and said, look, the